Welcome to episode 152 of Drew's Sports Crew here on this Sunday night. Myself, Drew Skyberg, bringing you the news in the Wisconsin sports world. And look, across all sports, we've had a big past week. Whether we go to basketball, right, with Doc Rivers becoming the new head coach of the squad, and now the Eastern Conference All-Star Game coach. I know that's not really gonna be how it's gonna go, but still, nonetheless, um, newsworthy. Just weird how that's all turned out. And then if we go to baseball, right, we see Corbin Burns finally being traded. Someone who we thought was going to be traded during the winter meetings in December gets finally traded here before pitchers and catchers report here in February. And then we go to football where we see Jeff Hafley, Boston College's head coach, I believe, for 4 seasons, now is coming over to Green Bay. More of not a coach you hire based on results, but rather on character and scheme is kind of how I would put the hire as Boston College had some, and we'll get into they had some good defensive metrics and then not so much this past year, especially. So interesting how it's all developed here for all 3 sports respectively this past week. And Bucks are coming up here at 7:00 as well with some questionable players and with some players already ruled out. So could be more of a back-to-back. You know how it is. So I won't really cover that as if you're listening on Monday, you already know the result of that one. But reminders before we start at Drew Sports Crew, all platforms, Instagram, X, TikTok, right? Whether you're looking for rankings, whether you're looking for Bucks prediction challenge, and then players of the week, right? Check out at Drew Sports Crew again, Instagram, TikTok, Drew Sports Crew, Facebook. Have all the content there for you. But otherwise, let's get started. I'll talk about scheduling at the end of the episode. We'll start over with the Milwaukee Bucks, who had, we're waiting on Sunday's result, but so far not a great week in terms of, okay, you lose at Denver by 6. That's a loss you can live with. You surrender 113 points, but to Doc Rivers' point after the game, he complimented the defense. Hey, you guys can play defense, and that was a great defensive showing nonetheless. They had a bunch of points off turnovers / fast break points that kind of inflated, I felt, the scoring output for Denver. They still put up those points. Bucks still deserved to lose nonetheless, but Bucks turned the ball over 13 times. They did shoot 40% from 3, which did stand out. This one was a rough game for Bobby Portis. Looking back, it was 2 for 13. Had 12 boards, though. Had a minus 14 plus minus, which was the lowest on the team by far, as Beasley had a +6, and then Lopez had +5. So point was, Bucks didn't deserve to win this one. Just some rough performances on the bench was really the decision on Monday. Come out Wednesday, that was the game. That was Damian Lillard's game, right? And it was just it's a cool story how he was able to take his son to school that day, and he was back into a routine like any other normal day. But unfortunately, it spoiled the game was as the Bucks lose that one by 3. Unfortunate how Brook Lopez took that last shot. I get it. I get someone had to take it, but you really wanted Dame. But it felt like Dame was chucking. He was 3 for 13 from 3 in this one, 9 of 23. Again, 25, 6 boards, 7 assists. Not like he played bad. I mean, he had a +6 plus minus. The starters overall played very well. It was the bench unit again. Bench unit was at a average plus minus of around -10 or so. I think Doc Rivers, I think the story too this week is trying to figure out rotations, trying to figure out what guys work, maybe what guys don't. I think that's something we're seeing. For example, campaign does not work in a rotation in a game like this. 8 minutes played, 0 for 5 from 3. Didn't really provide anything, quite frankly. Bobby in this one, the plus minus was poor, but puts up 11 points, 5 for 7 shooting. Crowder didn't have it going, 2 for 6, 1 for 5 from 3. And then Connaughton put up the almost Tony Snell game. 0 points, 0-0 from the field. He did have 1 rebound, 1 steal, and 1 turnover, though, and 2 fouls. So not really almost a Snell game, but you felt that watching the game, that it was almost the Tony Snell game. So that was what we're looking at. Otherwise, it's been the guards that have hurt the Bucks still defensively from what we've seen. Like Scoot Henderson had 15, Anthony Simons had 24, Brogdon had 14. So it's just kind of things like that. we're still seeing from this Bucks squad. But that was just a game. It just sucks to lose, honestly. Then you go play at Dallas, and that this game for the Bucks was an important one as they were down 24 end of one. 44-20 was the score, and it was like, really, we gotta watch one of these again. Um, but it did help that Kyrie Irving was out. The Bucks, I'm saying, for them to have it to stay in this game because if Kyrie was playing, obviously we hope Kyrie Irving is back out on the court soon. But for the Bucks' sake, as they've struggled against guards, it was a lot easier to defend Josh Green than others or than Kyrie Irving, right? And in this case, Green still a solid game at 20 points, but his plus minus, this was wild one to me in terms of how players performed. He played 38 minutes. When he was out on the court, the Dallas Mavericks had a minus 29 plus minus in a game where they led for a good chunk of it. They lost by 12. I mean, I say only by 12, but like Luca had like a minus 12 plus minus. They lost by 12. Luca also, as very Jason Kidd-esque, plays 42 minutes in this one in a 48-minute game. So that stood out to me too. It was like, wow, talk about letting him go. Luca also had 9 turnovers last night. That was another thing. Like watching the game, he had a couple of missed passes here or there, and it was like, how many does he really have? And you check it, it was like he had 9 turnovers. He almost got the quadruple double, I call it. And the fourth component is turnovers. We saw it. It was 40 points, 9 boards, 11 assists, 9 turnovers, 4 fouls. Stats sheet stuffer was what Luka Doncic was on Saturday night in Dallas. Other guys, I don't know, this Dallas team, like watch the Bucks play. They're 2-0 against them this year. Like without Kyrie, it just they got no like the Bucks have depth problems, we know, but man, this team has severe depth problems. They have because on the bench it's okay. Dwight Powell, are you gonna play him? Are you gonna play Markieff Morris? You know, I think they just are struggling with really who do they play in this game? Seth Curry against the Bucks? Are you gonna put him in there? Um, it's a bunch of aging vets who don't really have a role. I feel on this team. That's where they're going to make some decisions. Jaden Hardy, younger player, definitely is someone who has promise off the bench. But not that this is a Mavericks podcast, but all I'm saying is the Bucks are fortunate they don't have the same depth problems a team like Dallas has. It's very thin, I would say, and the Bucks could probably pull a trader. We're hoping they can pull a trade. Beauchamp not playing last night was a little surprising. I still am not really a fan of Payne getting these level of minutes. I think that's a valid concern. Also, Andre Jackson Jr. not really been involved since the Rivers hiring. I think he was with the G League even. So that's kind of something we need to monitor is what's Jackson's role going to be? I talked about this last week with Prunty. There was no role. Also, Robin Lopez starting for 4 minutes. That was just weird to me. I don't understand. But yeah, having no Brook last night was also an interesting dynamic. So it worked out for the Bucks in terms of defense was a concern. I mean, they still allowed 117 points, but they were it felt like that first quarter was kind of just like the outlier as they allowed 21, 27, 25 in the other last 3 quarters in that game. They have a Bucks Jazz tonight. We know injury report's going to be a story. How the Bucks going to prevail? Look, Bucks got to be ready for this upcoming week. This week has some games where you need them to win. I talked about in the pod last week was you want the Bucks to go maybe 2-2 in this stretch. You'd prefer 3-1, 4-0, but like you can live with the 2-2, and I think that's probably what the Bucks are going to do. I still think they can pull it out in Utah tonight. I know it's been a tough place for them in their history. I believe the stats only 2 wins since 2003. So it's been a long road in Utah, but it's doable tonight. Phoenix on Tuesday, 9 p.m. That's on TNT, so that's must-watch basketball. Seems like everybody's going to be good to go for the Bucks. Brook again's out for personal reasons. I'm sure we'll have more insight on that, but I hope he's going to be good to go on Tuesday. The Bucks have a home game Thursday night against Minnesota. 7 p.m. That's going to be a good one at Pfizer Forum. And then they have a back-to-back. They play Charlotte at 7 p.m. on Friday. And then no games next week, Saturday and Sunday. Marquette plays Saturday, so I'm going to guess that's just scheduling works out. And then Yeah, the next game is next Monday, then February 12th after those against Denver at home. Again, it's a tough schedule. We talked about 4 of the 5 opponents: Phoenix, Minnesota, Charlotte, Denver, Miami. Obviously, Charlotte's the outlier there. Tough games coming up. And then they have Minnesota, like they have another road trip coming up where they have at Memphis, at Minnesota on a back-to-back, which is disgusting. Both on primetime games too. But it's gonna be tough for the Bucks to manage that. Just a lot of primetime games coming up. I mean, they've had a decent amount over the last few weeks, but really picks up down the stretch here with a lot of ESPN, even an ABC there with Philly on a Sunday afternoon. Once they don't have to worry about competing with basketball, is really what happens. But we got some good games coming up. The season's really been flying by though. Like if you think about it, now we're already 49 games through after tonight. It's gonna be 50 games through the season. Honestly, weird to think about just where the season has flown by and really gets wrapped in the first few months with football, quite frankly, right? Since it starts in late October, we're just all in the football mindset, and then now basketball picks up. Here we go. Let's go over this Corbin Burns trade here. And look, this trade, this was an interesting one. About I was paying attention just because I like to see how it is. Obviously, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. Is how people, aka the media, portray the trade as it happens. Usually, we'll see the trades get bashed right when they happen by one side or the other, and that often doesn't really mean much. Um, the one time I feel like for me, like I just absolutely nailed calling a bots trade was when the Pittsburgh Pirates traded for Chris Archer. So for baseball fans, more specifically, Chris Archer. That was just a terrible trade since Archer you could tell Archer was past his peak to an extent in terms of he's already had a lot of wear and tear on his shoulder, had shoulder concerns with the slide or whatever. Not ideal, but this trade for some reason fans are calling the shot like how I did and said this is different. Archer had team control, so the Pirates were hoping for that, but the Orioles are getting Corbin Burns for 1 year. Um, in this trade from the Milwaukee Brewers. And the two guys Brewers are getting are DL Hall and Joey Ortiz. So DL Hall is a left-handed pitcher who got work in the postseason last year and played very well. He was actually probably, I think he was a top reliever arguably in the postseason for the whopping 3-4 games they played. It was 4, I believe. And they got Joey Ortiz, who actually hasn't really logged any LB. I don't think he's had any LB service time, but he's had some good numbers in the minors. I'll talk more about those here shortly. And definitely the goal for him is third base of the future. I think DL Hall, they're going to try to work him as a starter. I think he's going to end up having some kind of reliever role. I dislike how people are already saying he's Josh Hader. He's Josh Hader. And yes, he has great stuff. And Josh Hader was also an Oriole at a time. I get how it's a cute comparison, but doesn't exactly mean that. And I do see Joey Ortiz it was 7 for 33 in the majors so far in his career, but we're not really gonna acknowledge that as what we're looking at. But again, his minor league stats were solid. He was like if you'd crack the 90s in the top 100 prospects, usually was where he was at. But for Ortiz, though, yeah, the idea is he's going to be the third baseman of the future, is what people hope, which I think it's a valid thing. I believe the defense is there. Really, what's going to depend on is kind of with Tyler Black. The plan for Black is going to be more of having him. I envision at second/short. We'll see kind of where they put him, but I don't know. I'm wondering kind of how this is going to shake out. I think we'll know more for spring training. But going back to Ortiz's numbers, Ortiz also has second base experience too. But in AAA last year, he was great. I mean, OPS of 885, 9 home runs, 11 steals. And we don't have like the stat cast numbers per se, so I can't really look at exit velo stuff. That's going to tell us more of what kind of player archetype he is, but again, looking at the stats, his career minor league hitter of over 800 OPS, he has the chance to become a solid guy who you can depend on for the years he has control of the club. So you're looking at, right, 5-6 years with the team. You take that, and then you take DL Hall for 5-6 years. Granted, none of these guys were like the top 5 prospects. So I think the idea people were getting, which why this was a bad trade, which is incredibly wrong and interesting how it's developed, is these guys weren't considered top 5 prospects within the Orioles organization. So the idea was it was a fleece because it was not a top 5 prospect. But what's not known is the Orioles, or what I believe is known is, but maybe wasn't considered, is the Orioles have the number 1 farm system of all baseball. So their number 6 prospect and beyond have more value than on other teams. So it's like, okay, you get lower, not even lower tier prospects, but you get guys who are ranked lower than other teams' farm systems, but they really have the best farm system. So I think these guys are, in some, especially in the Astros. Oh my, the Astros farm system atrocious. They'd be top 3. So just the idea behind kind of what we're looking at. They also got the 34th overall draft pick. Draft pick means something, right? I mean, it's the 34th overall pick in the draft, but they would have gotten a draft pick if they would have let him, like, just let him walk. It's like a compensation pick. So the idea that that draft pick has a lot of value, it does, in terms of you get to draft him a year earlier. You know, you're not, it would be a pick in the 2025 draft, but instead they get picked in the 2024 draft. So a little strategic negotiation thing by Matt Arnold and his team to get another piece there, just to up the draft pick a year, which helps his team stay competitive. I like, so my take was, I like the trade in terms of they're swinging for upside. This is what you need to do. Take 6 years of control for Ortiz and Hall and this pick over one year Burns. You do that trade. You do it. Burns could have an all-time year. He could. And looking back at it, maybe you regret the trade based on how those guys pan out, but at the time, it was the right move to do. I think the other idea too was Orioles just had new ownership come in, with surprising on like a Tuesday. So the idea was, we've seen this in a lot of sports where new owners try to get win happy. I mean, more specifically with Steve Cohen and the Mets, new owners want to win. They want to win. That's the goal. Washington Commanders, we're going to see that this offseason. They want to win. And I think what we're going to see is just that here, with Baltimore. I think we're going to see a push for that. Dylan Cease is someone who they could still get too, because they didn't give up a lot of prospects. Cease has a couple years of control, so his value is going to be higher than Corbin Burns. I wonder if they think they're going to be able to re-sign Burns. I think it's unlikely that Orioles will, but who am I to know if they throw him the 30 million plus? He wants a Garrett Cole type deal, I think, and I don't think he'll get exactly that, but I think he'll be close. So it's a good move for the Orioles too. Like, no, I'm not bashing the Orioles. I think it was the right move for them at the time. They can afford to give up Joey Ortiz. As who do they have? Jackson Holiday, also, right? Gunnar Henderson. They have some guys who can fill those spots. So you just hope those guys pan out, and you think for the Brewers that spring training's gonna really tell a lot for this team. Willy Adames, I think, and this is me maybe looking not exactly at the fan perspective, but how I believe it's going to go. Brewers got to trade Adames here in the upcoming weeks, or no, when I say upcoming weeks, upcoming like in the next week. This is the best time to trade Adames. I think you could wait till the deadline too, but you're betting on how he performs this year. He's a streaky type of hitter where his value is going to differ significantly. I wonder if they've gotten pretty subpar offers too for him. Like, I'm wondering if they're getting like prospects out of the top 10 of their respective teams, based on kind of the delay. But he still has the potential to be a 3-4 win player, which at shortstop too has enough value where he's gonna be pegged to some decent capital, I would think. So I think we could see that trade happen. The Brewers, but you also are betting on, you need, I don't know, like it's tough to give up that kind of player than to and say you're going to be competitive. Maybe they don't give up Adames. If he has a big year, very big first half of the year, Brewers team not so much. You trade him. Freddie Peralta's most likely or not most. He is your opening day starter. I just hope he stays healthy, and that's like always been the X factor with him. But as you can tell, Brewers season's coming up. As I'm talking, getting excited. Pitchers and catchers report soon. So that's what we're looking at, and let's go over to what's going on with the Green Bay Packers making their coaching decision at defensive coordinator. They get Boston College's head coach, Jeff Hafley. So they get him right 4 years. We talked a little bit about this on Journey to Million, which again we'll be recording this Wednesday, 5 p.m. Central Time. And we talked about this as the news broke live, and the talk was we were a little disappointed with Halfley's results over the past season or so, as Halfley has not had, at least last year wasn't really a great year with Boston College um, in terms of results. They had a couple of games where they gave him 50 plus points. I know it's a huge personnel thing. He was known for his recruiting in college. That was something that stood out too. His recruiting classes ranked nationally very well for being Boston College. So it's going to be nice to have him there too. But he also does have some defensive coordinator experience. Well, with Boston College calling defensive plays, of course, but he was a co-defensive coordinator with Ohio State in 2019. But then he also has the NFL experience. You knew that they weren't going to just get a straight college guy. And I'm glad they didn't do that, because that can be concerning. Like getting a guy who hasn't dealt with NFL players, because that's what you look for. Like, it's always interesting with college coaches is how are they, like you're not coaching when you make that transition to the NFL, you're no longer coaching, kids, you're coaching grown men. I'm not saying you are in college either. It's always that dynamic could be a little interesting. These are guys doing this as their profession. But again, he has the NFL experience with Tampa Bay, 2012, 2013, defensive backs coach with Cleveland, and then San Francisco also. He was there with LaFleur, I believe. So he was with Matt LaFleur at some time. So like they also know him personally there, which definitely is a plus. I think what stood out too was character. I mean, there's time if you go to just social media, type in Jeff Halfley pregame speech to players. He stands out from a character perspective too. So I think that's something that definitely stood out. He definitely probably interviewed well. I say that as like the reports where Ben Johnson did interview well with Washington. He was the Detroit's offensive coordinator. He's coming back, but like that definitely makes a difference too in the NFL as it does anywhere. So it'll be interesting to see. What stood out too for Halfley was his defense is consistently ranked. I believe it was in terms of passing yards allowed per game. They were ranked nationally very high. I don't have the exact stat up right now, but I know that Halfley's past defenses have been well regarded, I believe. So um, that could play a part in it too. And definitely a schematic fit too was something that many linked to him as being the reason they hired him as well. So I'm excited with the hire. I again, and I'll speak for others. Nobody expected this hire. I mean, there's no way you expected. I thought they were going to get some NFL, like they were going to get an NFL DC. I thought they were like a Mike Zimmer, a guy like that. Get a guy who has had head coaching experience to take a role like this. Kind of what Dallas has been doing. Like, okay, Dan Quinn, come here, coach, or be the DC. Like, get a guy with experience at the head coaching spot and have an older guy, a vet. But they don't go that way. They go with Jeff Halfley, and that's the hire. We'll have more details too, of course, when the Super Bowl, when this wraps up. We'll have more ideas of like free agency stuff when that picks up in March. Otherwise, we're kind of just waiting here to see what's next. I think I speak for like right the Brewers. We still have some moves waiting for what's next, and we got Bucks basketball right now. We got some college hoops. March Madness almost here too. Be on the lookout for the bracket pool. I'll talk more about that when we get to March. But otherwise, that's all I got this week. Wednesday, again, 5 p.m. Central Time, Journey to Million. Myself, Drew Skyrick, joined alongside Jared Valesky and Zach Roush. But again, that's all I got here at Drew Sports Crew. That's going to wrap it up here for myself, Drew Skyrick, here on this Sunday night. Thank you all for listening to yet another episode of Drew's Sports Crew, the perfect podcast for you.